When you study create motion designers, you start to notice some patterns, not just in their style, but in also how they think. Good motion isn't about making things move for the sake of movement. It's also about control, intention, and clarity. And one designer who really embodies this is Gal Shear. His animations feel simple at first glance, but when you look closely, there's a lot of structure behind them. His work doesn't rely on any flashy effects, but instead, he uses focus and guides your attention. From our observation, he tends to keep one main object consistently on the screen, and then builds everything around it. This gives the audience a visual anchor or something that we call a focal point, something familiar to follow as new elements are being introduced. And I personally really like this approach because it keeps the viewer engaged without overwhelming them. Instead of throwing everything at once, it adds complexity gradually. And you see the same principle in filmmaking, branding, and even in product design. Start with clarity, then build depth. That's what makes motion feel clean, intentional, and memorable. And so, we're going to put this one into practice by recreating his viral framer animation. By rebuilding it step by step, we're not just copying a trend, we're also learning the fundamentals of motion design. Staging, rhythm, timing, and easing. And before we begin, I actually want to show you something. I made a couple of variations of this animation, not in After Effects, but entirely in Lottielab. This is to show that a tool doesn't define the quality of motion, the thinking behind the motion does. If you understand motion fundamentals, you can build great results anywhere. And with that being said, let's head to Lottielab and actually recreate Gal's viral framer video. Alright, so welcome to Lottielab. And before we actually do start with the tutorial, I just want to say, or I just want to mention, a quick little note before we start. The original animation that we're going to be recreating has a few 3D sections in them, and we are not going to be rebuilding those, because purely that's not the point for this tutorial. The goal for this video is for us to learn about motion structure, so we'll focus on rebuilding the core 2D motion entirely inside of Lottielab. Then at the end of this video, we'll stitch our results together with the original 3D parts using a simple video editor and literally something as simple as Canva, because we're going to be using Canva as our video editor. And yeah, this is about understanding motion and not overcomplicating it. And with that being said, let's get started with the tutorial. And I'm going to start by creating our artboard or our composition. So I'm going to scroll down a little bit here. I think I'm going to create everything at this part. I'm just going to hit F or press F, and then I'm going to draw our artboard. And then I'm just going to specify the size for this one to be 1200 by 1200, like so. All right. And then I'm just going to say that this artboard is called tutorial. You can call it whatever you want to call it. And then from here, I'm just going to select our rectangle tool, or you could press R. Then we could just draw our shape out, like so. And then we call this our background, like that. Let me just actually spell that one right. Actually, that's spelled right, but let's just capitalize the B. All right, cool. So from here, let's grab the proper color for our background, which is this blue right here. You could take a screenshot for it. I'm just gonna do my shortcut and grab the color and paste the color over here. And voila. This is our composition for the entire asset. Simple as that. All right, cool. So before we actually animate anything, we need to make sure the viewer knows exactly where to look. And that's called staging. It's how we control focus. So for example, over here in our logo, we want the audience to focus on how it all started from just a simple square and evolve into the final mark. That's our story, and staging helps us guide their eyes to follow it. Alright, so let's do that. So let's create a square. I'm going to press R and just draw a square, and I'm going to assign a size for this square to be 140 and 140, and then I'm going to place it at the center. And there we go. And now I'm just going to add an animation. So for this one, I'm going to be using custom keyframes. Turn that one on, and I'm just going to drag our timeline up. All right. So at 0.4 seconds, I want to have the same size keyframe, but 0, we want the size to be 50. And there we go. That's our first animation right there. And now, actually, let's review our asset again. It then introduces another shape. Now, at this point, it's building up the logo. And notice how each piece doesn't appear all at once. It comes together step by step. And that's what we call rhythm. Motion has rhythm, just like music. If everything moves at the same pace, it feels flat, really flat. And so, we create rhythm by letting things happen one after another and giving each moment a beat of its own. So, that's the concept of rhythm. And actually, before we actually do this very part of the asset, let's just recap what staging and rhythm is. Staging and rhythm actually happens at the same time. While staging decides what the viewer should focus on, rhythm decides when they see it. So we're not just placing elements, we're planning how attention flows from one element to the next. And basically, that's the idea for staging and rhythm. And this is what makes this very asset so viral, in my opinion. So, even if it's really simple, no flashy effects, nothing, it guides your attention really clearly. Alright, so let me just duplicate the shape layer 1 right here. And then I'm going to turn off our animate mode. You can just press A to turn it off, or press this icon right here. I'm just going to press A. Then I'm just going to quickly reposition this one. And again, the concept of rhythm is that we let things happen one after the other. So for shape layer 2, I'm just going to move it forward in time so that it starts a little bit later or right after when our first element stops animating. Alright, so it animates like that, then, lovely. But now it should be scaling at this part of our artboard. So what we can do for that one is we just select this one right here, and we just move it to scale at this part, right? So we do that, and it scales from there. All right, lovely. But now we just set this one back to 0, and then adjust the position again so that it starts scaling from this part. And now we have that. Right, lovely. But if I'm not mistaken, as it's scaling up as well as we introduce the other square, it also shifts the entire element back to the center. So let's do that. So over here, I'm just going to select shape layer 1 and 2, and then group them together. Command G or Control G if you're in Windows, then center them, like so. And then I'm just going to adjust the timing, and so that it shifts to the center as we scale or as we introduce the other element, like so. All right, lovely. And basically that's it. But something feels wrong here. Everything feels robotic. Everything feels linear. And this is where easing comes in. Easing basically controls how motion feels, how it accelerates, how it decelerates, because in the natural world, objects don't just start and stop instantly. There's a feeling to them. And our motion shouldn't like, how do I say this? Our motion should also feel natural. So for that one, that's basically easing. And now, what emotion do we want to convey for this one? Let's actually assess Gal's work in here. So for this one, we want to make it, how does it make us feel? It feels snappy. So we want to make it snappy. Let's then change the easing to be snappy. So I'm just going to select our transition bar right here, and then we're just going to change the easing to be snappy. And for that one, that's technically like smooth, but we're just going to exaggerate the ends so that we have the snappy feel right here. Like that and like that. All right, lovely. So group layer 1, I'm just going to rename this to be our logo. All right. But for now, let's actually change the design of our logo to match the original, which is just a couple of white squares with a border. Okay, so I'm just going to turn this one off, and I'm going to apply the styling on our group layer. So a fill of white, And then we're just going to change the opacity to 25 and the stroke to be white as well, like so. Lovely, lovely. And now we have that. Okay, so on to the next part, which is we then adjust the path of our elements. So it slants and morphs onto this shape like here. So for that one, let's have a standard timing of 0.4 seconds. So it's 0.8. Let me just turn back on animation mode by pressing this icon right here or by pressing A. And then we're just going to have a standard timing of 0.4. So I'm just going to add 0.4 onto our time. And then over here, what we want to do is that we want to enter to the path mode. But for that one, you just select our shape, press enter or double click. Let's actually double click it right now. And then at 1.2 seconds, we're just going to shift this node onto this time right here. Now we're going to do the same thing for this one. Double click and then just shift that one right here till it snaps to the other side. But I think there's a bit of a problem here because the animation starts at 0.4, but we wanted to start at 0.8. So what we could do is we could just copy this keyframe, move to 0.8 and paste it. Or alternatively, what you could do is you could duplicate keyframes. And to duplicate keyframes, what you could do is just select the keyframe, hold Option, or if you're in Windows, it's going to be the Alt key, then just drag the keyframe to the point in time where you want it to be. For our case, it's 0.8. And there we go. Now that we've duplicated that, it should start animating at this point in time. And there we go. Then again, that part right there feels robotic, so we adjust the easing to be snappy because we want to make it feel snappy. All right, lovely, lovely. And there we go. On to the next part. So the next part is basically we just pull this down. And basically we're going to be adding more nodes to this layer. So I'm just going to turn this one off and then so that we could go back to, what do you call this one? To design mode. And we're just going to add some more nodes. I press P for that one to grab our pencil right here. And the shortcut is P. And then I'm just going to add 2 more nodes. And there we go. And before we actually do go back to animate mode, how long should we actually extend this node right here? And I think, if I'm not mistaken, it's about the same height as we have here for our, what do you call this one? Our top square. So before we actually do that, let's just name things top square. And this one right here is our bottom square. Right, so let's have top square as a reference. So let's just duplicate it and place it over here as our reference. All right, cool. So now back to animate mode. And we wanted to pull down again with the standard timing of like 0.4. So plus 0.4. And over here, just grab it and then we pull it down like so. Make sure we align it to the center. And same thing for this one. Make it align to the center. Right, lovely. And now over here, we want things to be, how do we say this? To be centered as well, because we don't want this action right here. We just want it to be a straight pull down. So let's just adjust those nodes to align to the center. And then we have a straight pull down right here. Lovely. Let me just remove the reference. And there we go. Same thing again. We're going to make it feel snappy. So adjust the easing like so. And the values for those easings are actually these ones right here. And now let's review it quickly before we move on to the next part of our asset. So it scales down. And now, oops, we missed something. Because as it pulls down, the entire logo actually shifts again to the center. So let's do that. So as we pull it down, the entire logo shifts to the center, like so. And now we don't want it to start animating from here. We just duplicate the same keyframe and move it to the point in time where we want it to start animating. Then again, our easing, we want it to feel snappy. So we make it snappy. There we go. And now we review it. And voila. Basically, that's the first part of our tutorial. we've now built our asset from just a simple square, and now it evolved onto the final mark. Now, let's just focus on to the other details for this part of the asset, which are the guidelines. Alright, so for the guidelines, what we could do is I'm just going to turn off animate mode, and then I'm going to draw a couple squares. I'm going to press R to draw a square, and I'm just going to snap them at the very side of our logo right here. And I'm actually just going to group them and call this one as guidelines. And this specifically, this shape right here, we're just going to call this one as left. And then we're going to remove left's fill because we're going to add it onto the guidelines. What do you call this one? The guidelines level, or like the parent level of our group. We're going to add a stroke, turn this one to white, turn this stroke to dash, make it round, the dash length to be about 1, and the dash gap to be about 16. Let's actually zoom in, and there we go. Now that we've added those, let's just duplicate the same element. So left, duplicate left, and place it on the other end, and then we call it right. Alright, and then we duplicate this one again, just the size, and then we call this one as top. Like so. Now duplicate this one again, then we call it, oops, let me just snap this one right here, snap this one right here as well, duplicate this again, oops, and place that one at the bottom. So let's just pull this one down, and actually, let's check our reference. The bottom guideline starts at this point right here and not at this point. So let me just put a fill to this one so that I can select it better. And then there we go. And let me just remove it and then adjust our size right so. Call this one bottom. And yeah, there we go. Let's just adjust the style quickly to be about 25 in opacity. Right, that looks better. And now, just with these guidelines, let's try to animate them. So I'm going to turn on animation mode again, and then I'm going to start animating with the left guideline. So the left guideline over here, and then it moves to 0.4, right? So at 0.4, then this moves here. Then at this point in time, this one snaps here. All right, lovely. I'm going to do the same thing for the right side. Over here, right begins at this port at 0.4. We then shift it right here. And then at this part, we shift it right here. All right, lovely. And now what's next? For the top part. All right, so back to 0. We're just going to put it here at 0.4, shift it back here at 0.8, shift it here. Right, lovely. Now for the bottom one, let's pull it here. All right, that one right there, this one right here, and this one right here. All right, that seems to be it. Or did we miss anything? For that one, nothing changes, but at this point in time, there's another shift onto the top and bottom guidelines. So bottom one, let's just adjust the dimensions and the opacity, add those keyframes in so that it wouldn't change. And then from this point in time, we're just going to adjust it. We're going to do the same thing for top. We're just going to expand it for now and see the keyframes, add the same keyframes in so that at this point or at this segment in time, nothing changes. And at 1.6, we then introduce the change. Like so. Alright, so now the only thing left missing for this one is just to make them feel snappy. So let's grab our easings for guidelines. So this one right here and this one right here, both these transitions, we're then going to say to make this feel snappy. And so we have this. Alright, lovely. And now it seems like we're still missing a couple of guidelines. We're missing a middle guideline and a center guideline. So let's add those in. Alright, so how do we want to add them in? Let's start with the center guideline. I'm just going to duplicate the right one and call this one a center. Expand this one for a little bit so that we could see the keyframes. And over here, we're just going to adjust it so that it aligns to the center. And then that should do the trick. All right, lovely. And now let's do the middle one. So as for the middle one, how do we want to do this one? What we could do for this, I think we could use the top one, duplicate this one, and call this one middle. But this part, it should be here, right? Let's review it. So it scales up, adjusted, just like that. We're just gonna copy the same keyframe so that it wouldn't change. Paste that one right there. Nothing changes. And over here, we just adjust it again so that it's not at the middle. And there we go. Now, we've added those extra guidelines. And now what guidelines are we missing? We're missing the slanting guidelines. So let's actually assess them first. So this one right here actually came from the center. Then it slants to that position right there. So let's grab center. Then duplicate this one and let's call this one slant. So slant over here, let me just close this track. And then over here at this section in time, it just animates to this part. Okay, but before we animate anything, I'm just turn off design mode because I want our anchor point or origin point to be at this coordinate right here. So that whatever transformation change we do, it goes at this point. All right, so let me just undo that one. Place it at this part of the shape, and then turn on animation mode. In the animation mode, we're just gonna rotate it, and that rotation value is -45. We're just gonna extend it so that we don't see the extra lines, and there we go. All right, so just a matter of changing the easing. Change this back to smooth, and then adjust that one. Then we have our slanting guideline. And oops, we're missing something because actually this one right here also shifts. So we're just going to use our arrow keys. I'm just going to press the arrow key up to align that one there. And there we go. And I think I'm just going to adjust the easing again to be snappy. All right, there we go. And now on to the next slanting part. Let's assess it again. So it comes from the bottom, but the anchor point rotates at this point right here. Okay, so for the bottom one, let's just duplicate it and call this one a slant. Slant right there. Let's just close this track, expand our slant track, and as we pull it down, okay. All right, so back to design mode, and let's adjust our origin point. Let's unlock it first, and then let's just drag it here, like so. Back to animation mode, we just pull this one down, and actually, we also animate the origin point to match this one over here, and then we just rotate it. All right, lovely, lovely. Adjust the size. Oops, as we adjust the size, let's also adjust the origin point, like so. And then we just adjust the easing to be snappy. Copy this, or just go back to smooth and just adjust it again. And then we have a proper slanting. And there we go. Those are our guidelines. Simple as that one. And now at this point forward, it's just a matter of like following all the details that we have from Gal's original video. So, okay, let's do that one. So let me just change the entire duration to be 5 seconds. And then what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna pull down the guidelines to be at the very bottom. And now let's go back to our reference and see what happens next. So after we pull it down, what happens is that it then changes the background to black and our element to this solid color right here. So let's do that one first. So our usual timing of about 0.4, that's going to be our standard, plus 0.4, and then our background changes to, what was it again? To black. Okay, Then we want this to start at 0.6, no, actually 1.6. It changes to black. What happens to our logo? It scales down. Scale down our logo. Scales down for about 60%. Let's have it by 60% right here. And then what happens to our guidelines? Our guidelines also scales down, then fades out. So let's do that. So let's first adjust the anchor point of our guidelines because we don't want it to scale at this part. So we actually see that everything scales at this point right here. So let's place that one at the center. So to do that one, what we could do is just adjust that one over here. And then, oops, let me just turn off animate mode. And how do we center it actually? You know what? We could set the overflow to clip. Set this one, set the size for it quickly, like so. Like that, and like this. And then place it at the center. And there we go. That's the center. And then from there, we could say the overflow back to visible. And back to animate mode from this point. Then this right here goes to 60, but at the same time, it fades out. And we want everything to start at 1.6. So we just adjust the keyframes to start at 1.6. And there we go. It goes down like that. Now, just a matter of changing the easing. So linear, we're just going to change everything to feel snappy. Make it feel snappy, smooth, like that. And there we go. Now that we have that, lovely. Now we just change our logo to be a solid color. So as it scales down, everything goes back to 100. Like that. Alright. Sorry for the mouth effects. There we go. Douche. Lovely. And now let's observe it. And seems like it still is like scaling down up until 3 seconds. So onto 3 seconds, what we're going to do here is we're just going to continue scaling down for about like, I don't know, 50, but we're not going to change the easing. So we have this. Right, lovely. And then the next part is that it has this reaction right here as it scales up. So as it scales up, this bottom shape right here goes down, then goes back to the original position. So let's have our standard easing, or no, our standard timing, which is 0.4. Last 0.4, we scale this back to maybe not 100, let's set it to 90. And then from here, all right, so our bottom square, we wanted to have a position keyframe. Position keyframe over here, position, and a 3.4, another position keyframe. And in between this 3.4 is 3.2. We move it down, like so. And now, just a matter of changing the easing again. We want to make it feel snappy, so smooth, exaggerate it, and same thing over here. We accelerate it, nope, accelerate, then we decelerate it, so slow down. And now we have this. Right, lovely. That looks a lot better, but as it goes to this part, everything for this bottom element goes to this color right here. So let me just grab this color, bottom square, and the thing about that is that when we change the bottom square, it's basically changing this entire design right here. So what could we do? We could just turn this one back on right there. And let me just turn off animate mode. And this one is just white. And this one is the color that we just recently copied, like so. So as it scales down, what we're gonna do is we are just gonna change this color to 0. And this one to 0 as well. That one to 0. Oops, we didn't turn on animate mode, so let me just undo that one quickly. Go to animate mode, have this one to 0, and this one to 0 as well, like so. And then back to animate mode, let's just quickly add some strokes to them, because we don't have anything. A stroke, and another stroke right here. Like so. So, we animate them. Alright, lovely. Now that we have that, what then happens next? We have this one right here. We just pull it down. Alright, so that's what we're gonna do. But to have a reference, I think what we could do here is let's design first this path that they have. This one right here. So basically, it's about the same width of our, what do you call it? Our bottom square. And it has like some strokes to it, dash strokes, and just a linear gradient. Right, so let's do that. So let me press R and just try to match it as much as possible. So over here, if I'm not mistaken, that's 45, right? 45. And over here, let's do it so. 257. Feels like it's 256. Actually, that might do. And let's just extend it and extend it. Let's group this one and let's call this one launch path. Like that. And let's place it behind our logo so that we can see it there. Alright, and over here, let's just adjust the styling. So for this one, it has to be a linear. So it starts from here. Maybe we could do it like that. And then let's have this color right here. Actually, probably not, because it's a little bit lighter, right? So we have this color, that cyan right there. And then we just pick the same cyan. But we're gonna add another stop with the opacity being 0. Alright, cool. Now that we have that, let's do the strokes. So this one has to be white. And basically let's set the same thing that we have on our guidelines. Round, round, dash length being 1, dash gap being 16. But we're just going to change this one to be 25% in opacity. And so we have that. Alright, lovely. That's looking alright. Okay, cool. So after that, we then add another, our standard timing of about 0.4. So that's going to be 3.4 plus 0.4, 3.8. And then we're just going to adjust this one to move over here. Oops, we didn't turn on animate mode. Let's turn our animate mode back on by A or by pressing this icon, and then just pull it down like that. Alright, lovely. That looks alright. But if I'm not mistaken, as we pull it down, the colors should be changing as well, right? Yep, the color should be changing. And let's just have the same color that we have on our track. Be this, and this one as well. Be this. Actually, let's change it for just a tiny bit. Probably that. No, actually, I'm not a fan of it. Let's just change the stroke that to be white, like so. Like that. This is just me just playing with the colors until I get something that I kind of feel right with. And I think that will do. That will do for now. So we have that. As we scale down, we do that. Alright, cool. So our launch path, how do we actually introduce our launch path? So it shows up as we scale it down or as we pull it down. So what we're going to do here is we're just going to add an opacity keyframe, add an opacity keyframe, and same thing for this one. But the first one is just going to be 0, like that. And then we're just going to adjust our strokes so that it starts here. And we're just going to extend this one. This is the very last one. We're just going to have it here. So we have that animation right there. All right, lovely. And now what do we do next? Of course, per usual, we're going to adjust the easing to make it feel snappy. So make it feel snappy, smooth, bend it, and we have that. Cool. I'm not really a fan of that color. Let me just change it quickly. So that one right there, probably this, but in a different hue. I'm gonna do the same thing for this one. that but on a different hue. What if I just use this blue right here? Yeah, I think I'm a fan of that one. Okay, so that one right there. Right, and now as we're pulling it down, this asset is also being animated as well. So let's add a position keyframe, and let's adjust it actually to start at 3.4, and then it's being stretched up till here. And then we're gonna add the same easing, the snappy easing, and we have that. I'm not really a fan of the color now. Let's adjust it again. Sorry about that. Okay, so adjust that one to be this one to be this one right, this color right here. And I think that will do for now. So thanks. And after that, what do we do next? Here, we're just gonna pause for a bit. Then we immediately change to this path right here. It seems like it's extruded, everything's lengthened, and we have this trail behind it. Okay, so let's do that. So at 3.8, probably about at 4, I'm just gonna, what am I gonna do? I'm just gonna hide our launch path at this point, so hide it. So we have this, put down, then it goes up. Then at this point, what I want this to be, I want this to entirely turn to white. And I want that to happen actually instantly. So I'm gonna say hold, like so, like that, or we can still have it like snappy effect. I think I'll just have it to be snappy, like that. And then we're gonna be adjusting the path because it seems like it was lengthened. So this one, I'm holding shift, then I'm just dragging it up, like so, and there we go. Now that we have that, I'm just gonna scale this one down as well, probably about 75. So it turns to that one, and maybe at 4.5. Let's set it to 4.5. We're just gonna push everything to be at this side right here, onto the opposite side of our composition. About there maybe. I think that will do. And then over here, I think I'm gonna do the same thing. Oops, let me just copy this position, paste it right there, and then adjust the easing for this one, be smooth. So we have this. Actually, let's make it like that. I'm not a fan of it. Let's see, what can we do? Maybe it instantly just goes up, like so. Like that. And let's just adjust the easing to be both, like so, like that. Okay, cool. Let's review it. Pull it down, goes up, and actually, let's place this one over here. So as we pull it down, you know what? We just place it here again, but the position where I'm gonna be holding Option, and I'm gonna be duplicating this transition right here. Then I'm gonna say smooth, snappy again, like that. Goes so. Same thing for this one. I'll make them snappy as well. Smooth, snappy. Basically, just extend that one. Then over here, you want this to. Actually, let's not make it snappy. Let's make it happen instantly. Just an exception for this one, like that, so that it goes really fast. Poof. All right, cool. Now we're gonna do the same thing for this. We're gonna be moving it out of the frame or out of the artboard. Duplicate this same keyframe so that it moves at this point in time, and then we're just gonna make it feel snappy, like so. All right. Now what's left is just to do this trail behind this one. So what are we gonna do about it? We could actually just duplicate the same element, and then from here, let me just enter path mode, and then I'm just gonna pull it down. Actually, pull this one down while holding shift, so that we have that same angle right there. Oops, not that shape right there, but the shape right here, the bottom one, and pull it down like so. And then from here, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna adjust the colors for it. So that one to be this, and same thing for this one. I'm just gonna be changing it to a linear gradient, like so. And now, basically, it's time to animate this. Oh, you know what? This only shows once we disappear the launch path. So for that, let's actually call this one launch highlight. Launch highlight right there. And then what we're going to do is we're going to be animating the visibility. So once it disappears, this one appears. So let's see. Let me just expand that. And this one, make it to show. Disappears, shows, and goes up. Like so. Alright, lovely. Cool. So I think from here what we could do is just animate. I should have done this first. What we could do is we should have animated first the jittering effect. So this one goes to this side. Let me just hold shift and press arrow key to the right twice, and then move forward in time. Arrow key to the left, adjust it, and basically just make a jitter effect for it. Just do this one over and over again until you're satisfied. What I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna select this all and paste it again so that I get the same keyframes. And then I'm gonna adjust the spacing for this one. Copy them again, paste it here, and then I have this jitter effect, like so. Okay, so let's see that one. So like that. Okay, it's actually kind of looking the way I want it to look. But I'm just gonna delete the launch highlight, or actually, I could just copy the same position keyframes over here and paste it on to our launch highlight, like so. The launch highlight right there. And yeah, there we go. But what we're gonna do is we're just gonna change the styling back again, since we've already copied the styles. We've also copied the styles. So that one, move it here. This one, stroke as well. Move it like so. Okay, lovely. Now if we actually preview it, now we have that. And we need to fix a couple of things, especially this one over here. So why is this, or our trail, visible? And then why is it visible? The S? I wonder why it's visible. Bottom square, not this one as well. So why is it visible? Oh, we just flip that around, turn this one to show, and that shouldn't be. That still is in there. I wonder what's happening. What if we just delete this? That one right there. Position, scale, path. Okay, that seems to be right. Okay, lovely. I still don't get this one right here. Maybe if we just show height again. Animate mode, show height. It's actually not that. So what could it be? Not this one, not this one, definitely not this one. What's this shape? Oh, I see. Since because we've added this one over here, it also reflects onto our launch highlight because it's a children of it. So I think what we could do is just pull this one out, and now that should be invisible. Let me just delete that keyframe right there, and then we have this. Place this one to show, and there we go. And what we're going to do from this point forward is we're just going to adjust the size for it. So let me just go back to design mode and then just manually adjust the size. Like so. Like that. I think we need to adjust it a little bit more. And a little bit more right there. And voila. That should do the trick. Right, cool. So from there, as we pull it down, right. And now let's adjust the trail. Let's not call this highlight, but trail, to change its gradients as well. So that it extends for a little bit, shortens for a little bit as well. So this one over here, pull it down, and then another point in time, let's see the keyframes. This goes up, this goes down, up, down. Basically, again, just doing the same thing with a jitter effect. So we're just gonna copy the same keyframes, paste it here, maybe adjust the spacing for the keyframes, paste it again, then adjust it again over here, extend like that, and then we have something like this. Right, lovely. And now let's just fix a couple of things, and that should be it. It goes up, and nice. As you can see, there's a bit of a problem there with the size. Let's quickly adjust it so that it matches. Make it snap right there, and there we go. That should do the trick. Okay, so now let's just quickly fix this color right here. For this one, what we could do is still have this one as 0. Let me just turn on animate mode. The opacity to be 0. And then this one is 100, right? We're just gonna place it in here. Like that. So that goes down, moves to that color right there, and voila, that's it. We're gonna do the same thing for this one. The color at this point in time to be 0. And this one right here to be 100. So we have this. Actually, we don't need to change it. We could just have this one as instant so that nothing changes. As hold. There we go, nothing changes over there. And there we go. Voila, voila. And basically the only thing missing for this asset is just adding the extra details for this one. Because essentially this is everything for this asset. And actually what I did here is that I just added a couple of textures to play with the styling. I changed the colors, I added some extra glows to it and everything. For this one, the texture is actually not a proper texture, but just like a stock image. And we're gonna do that one later in a while. But let's preview this one quickly. There we go. This is just like a different color. And this one right here, I just inverted the colors. And yeah, you could play around with this different directions now that you've got like the foundations of your motion and design. So for this one, let's add some textures. So over here, let me search for something like blue. And blue, oh, this one looks really cool. So I'm gonna add that one in, and let me just close this media panel. I'm gonna call this texture, and I'm gonna just like rotate it on this direction right here. That looks nice. I'm gonna scale it up. Probably not show the face. Like that. And then I'm just gonna say overlay. And so we have something like that. Right. Cool. And basically that's it. Let me just adjust it quickly again. How about in this direction right here? Yeah, like that. And what happens if we duplicate it? But we set the duplicate to be, I don't know, probably screen. So we have that. Ooh, I'm not a fan of that. So let's not keep the duplicate, but rather just have one texture. And there we go. And that's basically this. That's basically it for this tutorial. And alright, so now that we're done with our asset, now we know the core of motion design: staging, rhythm, timing, and easing. Staging makes sure that your audience knows where to look. Rhythm gives your motion flow and structure. Timing makes it feel intentional, and easing gives it life. It controls emotion. It's a property that makes it feel natural. And together, they turn simple movements into storytelling. And yeah, in our logo animation, we didn't just make shapes move, we guided attention, controlled pacing, and made every transition feel purposeful. So, the next time you animate, don't just think about what moves, but also think about how and why it moves. Because when every motion has a meaning, even the simplest logo can feel cinematic.